Today on the Crit House, Fran Forman discusses her 5 images from Caravaggio, Vilhelm Hammer, Edward Hopper, Philip Lorca de Corsia, and Tanya O Klein. Hey everybody, welcome to the Crit House. I'm Jeff Larson, and today we have Fran Forman, who is a photographer who I guess refers to her images as photo paintings, and they are in the permanent collections of museums throughout the world. She has had at least a couple of books out there. Her latest, The Rest Between Two Notes, selected work by Fran Forman, has won international acclaim, selected as one of the best photo books of 2020. And another book she had previous to that in 2014 is Escape Artist, The Art of Fran Forman. And she has been in many solo exhibitions around the world. She's represented by galleries around the world as well. And Fran, welcome to the Crit House. It's nice to have you on.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. Delighted to.
I am looking forward to the conversation and looking forward to hearing more about you. But so I gave that little thumbnail introduction for you. How do you talk about yourself as an artist or a photographer? So when somebody says, "What do you do?" What do you tell them?
Well, I think of myself less as a photography, especially these days, and more as a visual artist. Because although I use a camera, I don't exclusively use a camera. I use a scanner. I use my phone, which I guess is also a camera. And recently I've been playing with AI and incorporating that into my photo composites. And when I had the show at the Henry Talbot Fox Museum in England, the curator referred to my work as photo painting. So ever since then, I've continued to refer to it as photo painting because I really function more like a painter than as a traditional analog photographer.
Well, and certainly in the influences that we'll be talking about here shortly, painting is well represented
Yes.
in the selections you have. So what did you go through in deciding just 5 images? Because I know we had a hard time getting down to 5.
I was very challenging. There's so many more. And when I give presentations, I like to reference them. So many more artists. And I always pay homage to them because nothing I do is really original. Everything is based on work that I've seen and imbibed and incorporated into my brain over the many decades of my life. But I start really with Caravaggio because of his use of light and shadow. Well, it's less this image, although I love it, but it's really his incredible use of light and shadow, which foresaw the changes that occurred about a century later, especially in Flemish and Dutch 17th century work. And his images were very different than what his contemporaries were doing, in that he showed people's emotion, he understood perspective, but he knew how to use light and shadow to tell a story and to enhance his narrative. And my work, all my work is narrative driven. So the fact that he was able to tell stories that didn't necessarily resemble stories from the Bible and also contextualize them into his environment, which was 16th century Italy, I found these really very moving. He also used, it's very possible, it's not 100% no, but it's also possible that he used camera obscuras and some kind of optic devices in order to do his painting. And since I use lots of tools in addition to my camera, I felt that I should remark about his use of very early camera equipment.
Well, you referenced that you use AI now for some of your imagery. It seems like maybe I don't know that much about photo history, so I'm probably saying something silly, but it seems like there must be an equivalence between the camera obscura back in the day and AI now, because I know it was controversial for people to use that, right?
It was, that's exactly right. And I'm sure the purists at the time derided the fact that some painters were using camera obscura. It's not 100% clear that Caravaggio did. There's a lot of research. David Hockney, in fact, has done a tremendous amount of research on the use of those devices during this period of time. But I'm not an art historian. I've just spent a lot of time looking at these painters.
Your second image is from an artist that I was previously unfamiliar with, and I'll probably get the name wrong, but Wilhelm Hammershoy. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's Wilhelm Hammershoy.
Wilhelm.
He is dangerous. He is Dutch. I mean, sorry, he's Danish, and he was born towards the end of the 19th century, lived until around 1912. He was well known in his time, but really fell into obscurity soon afterwards. His work is now being revived. His paintings are almost exclusively of the interiors of his apartment in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and he used his wife as a model. But what I love about his work, and I feel in many ways is very similar to Hopper's work many years later, although I don't have any knowledge that Hopper knew of Hammershoy's work. What I love about him is his use of doors and portals and light and geometry and architecture. And I discovered Hammershoy after I'd started doing a lot of work with portals on my own. And someone actually had referenced Hammershoy and compared it to my work, which I found really fascinating. And the more that I've seen of Hammershoy, the more that I feel tremendous affinity, not in terms of color, but in terms of light pattern and interior spaces, and also the solitary figure you'll see in a lot of my work. Well, I'm really indebted to the person who I can't remember who it was, who first mentioned Hammershoy to me. And since then, I read as much as I could find about Hammershoy. There's not a huge amount, but there was an exhibition of his work at the Brooklyn Museum maybe 20 years ago, and a book came out of it. I think it was called Northern Lights. I'm not exactly sure, I can't remember. But, and then I wrote a paper about Hammershoy, and the more that I look at his paintings, I just feel so touched by them. And you'll see when I show Hopper's work that there's definitely an affinity between the two of them.
Well, let's do that.
And
here is Mr. Hopper's work. We'll go straight to it.
Okay, well, obviously Hopper used color and very vibrant color, but he also, and this is one of many, he also did quite a few interior scenes like Hammershoy. Hopper photographed and painted his wife, as did Hammershoy. The solitary, enigmatic use of the figure is very specific to the two of them. And his use of light and pattern and diagonals and geometry, I find references Hammershoy in a way that I hadn't seen before. This particular image, which is called the Automat, I've also tried to replicate in another image of mine called Blue Light, which you can see elsewhere. This is one of my many favorite Hoppers, and the use of the big black screen behind it, which is the nighttime scene behind the restaurant, I think is just brilliant and thrilling. And you see the reflection of the lights in the automat through the window. And as I said, his use of color, orange and blue, the complementary colors, he was just a master of colors as well as a brilliant draftsman.
He was seemingly the favorite of photographers in America. Like almost every photographer who references their favorite painter, it always seems to be Edward Hopper, at least the American ones that I know. I mean, I'm sure that's not fully the case.
Well, also, I would offer that he has influenced many cinematographers, including Alfred Hitchcock, and he himself was influenced by cinematographers. So there was a duality between the two. Hopper went to films a lot.
Yes.
He loved movies. He took a lot from what he saw, and they in fact took a lot from Hopper's paintings. Well, Philip Lorca de Corsia is a contemporary photographer who also does a lot with enigmatic scenes, interior spaces, somewhat forlorn people. This is one of my many favorites of his for many reasons. First of all, the monotonal colors, the monotones, the reflection of the woman. And the back of the woman, I often also photograph backs of people. And occasionally I have my figure looking into a portal, into a window, into a mirror. And he's doing that here. What's particularly interesting to me about this photograph is the scene on the TV, which appears to be a tornado. I would have assumed this was a photo collage, but I don't think it is. And he was able to achieve in a single photograph what I struggle with my photo collages, but I just think this is brilliant.
So your final image from Tanya O Klein, this feels a little bit like a Nan Goldin for me.
Yeah, I guess, except that her use of color, I think, is much more vibrant and more interesting to me than Nan Goldin. She's contemporary. Tanya is a Mexican artist who shoots a lot in the United States. I actually met her a couple months ago in Paris. I felt that I was in the presence of an idol, which I was. Even though she's quite a bit younger than me, I was almost starstruck. But she also shows enigmatic quality, especially of women, usually solitary figures, often in interior spaces. I love her use of light and color. I just think it's extraordinary. What's interesting to me is you don't see this woman, you only see almost the silhouette of her, but a little bit of smoke on the lower right-hand side makes me wonder, where is that coming from? She's holding a cigarette. The smoke wouldn't be coming from below.
Yeah, it's coming up, right?
Yeah, so it's just, as I said, very enigmatic. I don't completely understand it, but that's also what I try to achieve in my own work. Something that makes you look and wonder what's really going on here. It seems like an ordinary scene at first until you look a little bit more closely, and there's some kind of mystery, magical quality to it that really is a reward for the more careful viewer.
Yeah, just as we're sitting here looking at it, I just see, I do a lot of sort of silhouette images in the work that I do, and I actively try not to because it's a crutch for me. But this is so lovely because it's a silhouette, but it's a silhouette where there's a portion of it that's so brightly lit. The light on that left arm and the color is just beautiful.
When I met her, I was dying to ask her, how do you light your figures? How do you do that? I didn't have enough nerve, so I have no idea. But I just think she's brilliant, and I love her work.
Well,
and I'm sorry it's only 5. I wish you'd let me do at least 20.
Well, perhaps the next episode will be do a my 20, the most famous.
Right, my favorite.
But Fran Forman, just a pleasure talking to you, to get to know not only you as an artist, but your influences as well. Thank you for joining us on the Crit House.
Thank you. It was a great opportunity.
And thank you all for watching the Crit House.